I'm Jasmine Moradi, and you're listening to the Queens of Tech podcast, a podcast series about raising the voice of workplace champions. 60 plus questions in around 30 to 40 minutes with women of color, non-binary, and transgender influencers about their journey into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I started the Queens of Tech podcast initiative in May 2022 because I would like to retain more women of color, non-binary, and transgenders in the tech industry. Talent is out there, but our work environment needs to improve for all to feel safer, stay authentic, and to be valued for our contributions. My vision is to raise the workplace ecosystem for all in tech by killing the imposter syndrome, stopping bad behavior, and increasing equity opportunities. Each podcast talk is built around 60 plus questions regarding upbringing, education, career path, DIB, and future advice. My mission is to bridge the gap between schools and workplaces by getting into the heart of my guest's personal life and career journey to inspire other girls, women of color, non-binary, and transgenders to unleash their full potential to reach top leadership roles in the tech industry. My goal is to raise the voices of tech champions around the world and together with companies, investors, and politicians, raise the challenges and opportunities around equity, inclusive, diversity, and belonging in our workplaces. Enough is enough. I would like to enforce companies to build a sustainable, inclusive culture to retain diverse talent so we keep the workforce power equity to continue building future diverse and inclusive products. Representation matters. Your voice matters. In this episode, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Tech Queen Stephanie Barber, Product Manager at Teaching.com. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi,
I'm very happy to have you joining us all the way from California. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. It's hot and warm here still in Stockholm, and I love it.
Yeah, here too. We're having a heat wave down here.
Now I'm excited to get to know you better. So let us dive into your journey into STEM. Hope you're ready for the Queens of Tech 60 plus questions.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Let's warm up with a few fun facts about you. How would you describe your personality in 3 hashtags?
Probably resilient and ambitious.
How would you summarize your life in 3 sentences?
My life and career have been about as non-linear as possible, but at this point, I wouldn't have it any other way.
What kind of music stimulates and motivates you the most?
I can't concentrate if I'm listening to music with lyrics. Usually pretty dramatic classical music is what gets me going.
What's your personal motto?
You don't have to be fearless. You just have to make the leap despite the fear.
What is your favorite book?
I love books, but I love children's books most of all. This is where I've ended up in my job. But my favorite of all time is The 50 Prince.
What is your favorite podcast?
I'm a podcast junkie for sure, but mostly for pleasure. I love listening to storytelling. Probably the best of all the storytelling podcasts is This American Life.
Mac or PC?
Both.
There's something interesting about you that most people don't know.
I practiced martial arts for 15 years before I moved to California.
What is your hidden talent?
I make an outstanding Oreo cheesecake.
Yummy. And if you were going to write a book about your life, what would the title be?
You can be weird, and it's okay.
Great start. Now, let us dig deeper. Our childhood has a profound effect on our adulthood. Our early experiences shape our belief about ourselves, others, and the world. Now, I want to discover your childhood. Where did you grow up, and how did it shape your early experiences?
I grew up in a small town in New England called Merrimack, New Hampshire, and it's a good place to be from, I'd say. And then I was ready to explore. Lots of playing in the woods and exploring and being independent.
What was your dream job when you were growing up then as a child?
I went through a lot of phases, most kids, but I'd say probably the most enduring one was wanting to be a vet.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Probably had 2, chemistry, for sure, and theater.
What was your least favorite subject?
physics, and stats.
What is your earliest memory of technology and the arrival of the internet?
Probably my earliest memories are of Reader Rabbit and Writer Rabbit. Loved those education games. And then in high school, I was big on downloading music legally on Napster. I was definitely all about that.
Which were the three first technology gadgets you owned yourself, and how did they influence your interest in tech going forward?
Well, there was my family's Apple IIgs for sure, the first PC at home. And then of the tech gadgets that I remember, having an iPod was a big deal at first. And then I had a pink BlackBerry. I still miss that phone.
Oh, I had a black and a white one. I can tell you, I still miss that one too.
Oh, it was great with the tactile keyboard and
During the period of time of your life, who was your female role model growing up, and what about her inspired you?
it sounds maybe a little cliche to say, but my mother for sure. She's fierce and a formidable woman. And she was a school teacher, incredibly intelligent. No one could tell her what to do. She was really fighting misogyny day to day at work. And I saw that, and I still am very impressed by her.
And based on everything you said about your childhood, how do you think where you grew up and the school you went to and the generation you come from influence your education and career choice?
The way that I grew up, there was this feeling of exploration and being independent and trying new things, exploring new things. And with technology, I think the Oregon Trail generation, where I'm a digital native, remember the internet starting, remember people getting computers in their home and in school and things like that. So it was part of that transition. And for people of my age, technology is very much a tool that you manipulate and you learn how to use and you make it work for you versus having it be sort of a mindless entertainment or something passive. So I think in my work now, I'm always thinking about how technology can be that way, like how it can be a tool versus how it can be used passively or mindlessly, like how somebody can really interact with it deeply.
I do recognize that. So let us dig into your career. But before that, I'm going to read two quotes. First one, how does the universe expect me to choose a career path at 16? I can't even choose what I want for dinner. Second, Abraham Lincoln said, I quote, the best way to predict your future is to create it. Stephanie, I want to know the choices behind your career path. Where and what did you end up studying at university?
My career path is pretty nonlinear, like I said. So that first quote really resonated with me. I really thought I knew what I was going to do going into university. I entered as a chemistry major. Plan was to be a doctor. I did finish all of my pre-med requirements, but within a semester, I had switched my major to theater. I was finally pursued that passion of mine. That was always something that I'd love to do, but I didn't think I could. I didn't believe in myself to pursue it for real. But I had some champions when I got to university, and that's what I focused on. So I dropped the chemistry to a minor. I pursued theater as well. Still kept the science in there because I love it so much. And that what brought me to LA. And then I did that for a while until it no longer brought me joy. It's so interesting. I think what theater and performance really brought to me helped me realize what my real values were and what my goals were. And for me, that was about impacting people at scale. So something I really appreciated about like my childhood, I mentioned my mother, both my parents were school teachers, and I loved what they do, what they did. And I love teachers so much. And I think one thing that's so amazing that they can touch people so deeply on a really like one-to-one level. And I admire that. But for me personally, I wanted to be at scale. So I wanted to be touching the lives of people that I never meet, that I never get to actually personally witness. That was something that mattered to me. When I was switching careers, then it became about what really matters to me. And in that time, education was still very important. And I had fallen into tutoring, and I was really interested in personalized education and play-based learning and that creativity. And so my focus was where I got my master's degree and then switched my career. But it was all about that focus on impacting people at scale and focusing on what really mattered to me.
And you did answer the next question, which was your parents that influenced you to get into your choice in film.
In a way, yeah, it's so funny. When growing up, I was the only child of two teachers. And because of that, I promised myself I would never go into education because it was challenging for them. I witnessed it every day around the dinner table, hearing them talk about their struggles. And so I said I would never go into education. And here I am. I'm in a very different segment of education. So I did do that, but still now in my own career, embrace the big challenges of education and then try to impact them as much of a way as I can.
And you described for us the shift that you did from chemistry, wanting to become a doctor, and also the doctor went to your childhood dream of at least the vet.
There's a theme in there somewhere. Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a vet, was a doctor, and then going into theater, and then now the teaching and teaching.com. Did you have any professional roles between the theater and teaching.com?
Yeah. So I went back to school for my master's degree. I got my MPA at USC. And the goal there was I intended to either work in nonprofits or in foundation work, thinking about education policy and education work. And then I had the benefit of getting a job through SC at a place called Game Desk. And I was doing project management and curriculum development work for them. And that's really what jumpstarted my ed tech career. And I fell in love and never looked back. It allowed me to use my creativity. It allowed me to use my diverse background. So using my science knowledge, my performance knowledge, literature and theater, and all of the things that I had accumulated along the way, and my creativity to build out these new products. And I just loved being on the product side of ed tech. And then I was at Age of Learning doing assessment development there as well. So working on play-based assessments. I did some nonprofit work, doing some program management. So yeah, I managed to build up this body of work before I ended up where I am now.
And what is interesting that I'm hearing is that you were sitting on the dinner table with your parents, hearing their challenges about education in general. And now with the use of technology and your skills, problem solving, I'm sure that you are creating some of the changes and improving education courses and programs for children.
Yeah, that's what we do at teaching.com. And then in my role, reading.com in particular is creating software that helps children, students, teachers. And I think about my parents as teachers, and I get to talk to teachers a lot, and I'm excited to make something that works for them. And I get to talk to parents who are trying to use this with their kids at home. And it's all about making really great product that not only changes the system in some way, but also just helps people achieve what they're trying to do and overcome the hurdles that they have.
That's definitely a synergy there. And you're a product manager. What is your main responsibilities?
We're a very small team, so everybody does a little bit of everything. And I think the product manager role is relatively new at my organization. We've had it for a few years now, and it becomes a little bit of a grab bag. I definitely have days where I've been busy all day and I don't know what I did. But that being said, right now in my role, I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of user interviews. So I've been leading the user research for our product. So getting to have a lot of FaceTime, one-on-one user interviews, which is just delightful. I also pitch in a lot with customer service for the same reason. I'm just trying to have a real hands-on approach with our end users. Part of the leadership team as well. And for that, it's also a lot of pitching because we're part of that user research cycle, pitching new projects and documenting requirements to hand off to the development team and things like that, and validating. So working with QA, say that I'm linking all of the different parts of the product, the marketing team, QA, customer service, leadership, all of that, tying everybody together.
And how did you get the role?
I was the curriculum director for the whole organization, and the product I manage now is reading.com, and I was part of the core development team. So I was hired to help create it from scratch. We built this and launched it from nothing, which is very exciting. And then once it was launched, they really wanted somebody to lead the product, and I know it better than anybody else. It was a natural move for me to lead the product.
Amazing. Congratulations. And you did mention that you have a broad responsibility. What does a typical workday or work week look like for you?
It's a lot of user interviews right now, which I love. And thankfully, I will say my organization does a really good job of being relatively asynchronous. So when we have meetings, they're very impactful and not that common. So I will say we have a lot of autonomy to work on our own, which is something I really appreciate. And then obviously communicating with the other teams. And like I said, doing research and pitching projects, documenting requirements, communicating with customer service, all that kind of stuff. It's great.
I love the quote, choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. So Stephanie, what would you say is the thing that you love the most about your role?
I get to have a real close relationship with users. I really get to see the impact that we have. And that's when I was talking about what my values are. I get to see that firsthand. So I get to talk to people who the product that we developed, that we launched, first of all, that in of itself is incredibly satisfying to take something from zero to launch and is just incredibly powerful. And then now that it is launched and it's in the world and we're still growing, getting to see how it's impacting people's lives. I mean, we have people who their child was struggling so much they couldn't read, they were struggling to read, and now they're crushing it. Like now they can read fine, they're doing well in school. I mean, it's very powerful.
What is the best experience you've had in your current role so far? Any examples?
Yeah, launch. I think I was at a lot of startups before, and I think a lot of people who've been in startups can identify with this, where there's great ideas, everybody's working really hard, and then it just stalls out maybe right at the end. Something just doesn't actually make it over that finish line and get launched, or something goes awry. And it was and is very satisfying to be part of this team that just made sure that didn't happen. We got this over the line, we launched it, and beyond just launching it, it's growing really well, and it's just exciting to see that and to be part of that. It's thrilling.
And I'm sure that during that journey, you bumped into a couple of challenges. What would you say is the biggest challenge you've encountered so far, and how did you end up tackling it?
Yeah, I think for our team, it was finding quality staff that knew the tech stack really well. And we were sort of operating as a startup within a larger company, I guess is how it was. And with this team, we had some turnover at the beginning. So it had that thread of things having to start over again. We needed to refresh things again. And that was hard. And finally, now we have a really solid team. But I think it highlights the importance of just hiring really well, doing your best to deeply investigate people, hire really well, and then fail fast. So if somebody's not working out, don't drag it out. Just cut the cord and then just keep working until you find the right fit for your product and for your organization and your team. And I think people sometimes take hiring seriously enough. It's an art and a science to hire the right people.
What do you wish everybody understood about your role?
Product managers need to, it's sort of like the mental equivalent of having too many tabs open, but you need to be able to hold them all in your mind so nothing slips through the cracks. And that's your job, is to be the person that doesn't let something slip through the cracks.
And what is the one common myth about your professional field that you want to disapprove?
I think working in ed tech, people think that you need to be a former classroom teacher or you need to be a developer to be able to be successful in ed tech. And that's just not true. There are so many roles available and there's so many routes to working in this field for sure.
So what is it that you love about working in the tech industry?
Being able to create things at scale that impact a lot of people. Exciting.
Oprah Winfrey said, I quote, "Think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail. Failure is not a stepping stone to greatness." So Stephanie, what has by far been your biggest achievement in your career?
Launching read.com for sure has been my biggest achievement. I'd say also just maybe taking a step back, navigating a career change is something I'm very proud of. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do or don't know how to do, or can you just kind of do it?
And that you are a role model. I'm sure a lot of people also listening want to understand, how do you get into the tech industry when you've had another background and it's a risk and daring to do it?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I didn't think that at the time. It was just something that I had to do. And so I just did it. I think sometimes people, I don't know, get stuck on the gravity of the situation of switching a career. And the best way is to just try to ignore that voice that's telling you that this is such a big deal. And you just have to just buckle down. You just have to execute. A lot of times I tell people, and I'm like, I don't know if this is healthy at all. You're going through a really hard time in your life or your career or whatever. Don't push down the feelings. Don't try to ignore your feelings. Just bookmark them for later, like execute now and feel the feelings later. Give yourself the space and time to have feelings later. But right now you just have to execute.
What would you say then is the biggest factors help you become successful? What are your success habits, for example, to be able to do this shit?
Being bold, right? I think about when I first got this role as a curriculum director at teaching.com at this organization, I was doing some consulting work for them. And I just told them that they needed to hire me full time because these are all the things that they were lacking at the time. I was like, these are the goals that you have. Here's what you're trying to pursue. Here's how you will achieve it. I'm the right person that you should hire to do that. And I told them to hire me. And they said, okay, yeah. I think there's something about just being bold in your moves, whatever they are. And my mother told me once that she thought I was fearless. And I don't think I'm fearless. I think I have a lot of fear or anxiety in my daily life. I think it's just about having some confidence in yourself maybe through experiences of failing and being okay again, that you fail enough times and you're okay again, that you know that you can be bold. And if you fail, it's going to be okay. You're still going to endure. And I think you have to practice that enough times. You have to practice doing something bold, failing, being okay, and starting over again. And then it becomes a little bit more of a habit.
How do you then end up measuring your own performance at work, knowing that you're successful or not?
For me personally, I think one of my strengths and my weaknesses, it's both, is that I'm quite methodical. And so it means that I can be slower than I'd like to be. So for me, it's about efficiency. That's how I measure my own productivity or my own work, is that I don't have any time to dilly-dally. I'm slow and methodical. All of my time needs to be maximized.
And with success comes failures. What would you say is the biggest failure in your career? What did you learn from it?
I suppose my biggest failure was not becoming a famous actress, but that failure forced me to evaluate what my core values were and how I could pursue them in other ways. I think sometimes, especially in the US, people get focused on what's your job, what's your career, and that becomes your identity without thinking about what are your actual values? Like, what are you trying to do? Because there's a lot of different ways that you can accomplish whatever your goals and your values are. And it's not just about this label of what your job is, per se.
That can also be a lot of people that is running towards getting that title, getting that kind of job, but actually haven't had the time to figure out what their values are, that when they end up high in those roles, that they are still not happy.
Right. Exactly. I think, yeah, we get fixated on a particular role or this idea of something without really thinking deeply about what it is and what it means.
What would you say is inspiring and motivate you the most in your role and career right now for you?
I have some great partners at work. Our lead designer is very inspiring to me. He's in a pod since the beginning of developing this product. And so I think we get a lot of inspiration from each other, which I really appreciate. It's so nice to have somebody in your circle at your work and your career that really inspires you and motivates you. And then the users too. Like I said, I get to talk to people every day, and not a lot of people in tech maybe get to have regular conversations with their end users. And 90% of the time, I'm hearing just wonderful things. Like, I'm not hearing complaints, or I'm not getting the customer service thing, somebody's mad about something, or I'm getting the really positive reactions of people talking about how this has impacted their families.
Let us now jump into the influence of mentor, role models, champions, and sponsors. Role models can consciously or subconsciously be a powerful force in our lives. In addition, champions can stand up and advocate for us and open up the world of possibilities. Sponsors match emerging talent with leaders and influential employees who can help us move ahead in our careers. So, Stephanie, do you have a mentor, champion, or a sponsor today?
I'd say at this point, I don't, which is a little sad. Like, I don't think I have somebody in that role right now in my career. I try to be that for other people. I want to help, especially other women at my organization and things like that, support them and make sure that they are advocated for. I'm advocating for them and that they feel confident to be bold.
You're saying that it's sad, but I tell you, it's very normal. I don't even have it. And history shows that it has been more common for men having mentors, champions, and sponsoring business than women. So how important do you think is to have a mentor, champion, and sponsor through one's career, for example, for the next generation and for their listeners?
I did previously have one earlier in my career, and I think that was critical. So I think being a champion and a sponsor for particularly younger people in their career is huge. And for women, people of color, etc. If you're in a position of authority and power, making sure that those folks are given a chance that's maybe beyond the role or the project or whatever, seems like it's a little bit beyond what on paper it says that they're capable of, but trusting your instinct with them, you know this person, you know that they're incredible, give them that shot and give them an opportunity to really succeed and shine, which I think historically men have given that opportunity to younger men all the time. It's having that same mentality.
Let us move on to leadership. Adena Friedman, President and CEO of Nasdaq, said, I quote, "Empowering those around you to be heard and valued makes a difference between a leader who simply instructs and one who inspires." And Shirley Sandberg, ex-CEO of Facebook, said, I quote, "Leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that the impact lasts in your absence." So, Stephanie, what does leadership mean to you?
gosh, there's so many things that make up a good leader and great leadership. I do think there's a lot to do about charisma and making people feel welcomed and confident and making people feel, invited to the table, able to share their experience. Because as a leader, it's not about you, right? Like it's about trying to maximize the humans around you. That's how you will be successful as a leader. So I think there's also some confidence to make some solid gut decisions and encourage people to do the same thing. So not be such a slave to data necessarily. Like use that to inform your decisions, look at the field as a whole, whatever you're doing. But I think a bold leader, a good leader also makes some solid gut decisions and sets that example for others as well.
What would you say then distinguish a good leader from a bad leader?
Making people feel confident in themselves and letting them know that they're capable and helping them reach their potential for sure.
Who is your favorite female non-binary or transgender tech leader and why?
Recently, I've been really inspired by 𝘝𝘰𝘪𝘤𝘦𝘴. She's the founder of Girls Who Code and Moms First. I've been following her a lot on social media lately, and she gets me fired up. I think she's cool.
How would you describe yourself as a leader?
I think, and this is funny, based on my theater background and my theater training, I'm really driven by personal connection and empathy. Anybody who's ever done a theater class or done any theater training, it's basically like going to therapy. It's a lot of development of empathy and working on yourself, connection to yourself, connection to others, and that human connection. So that's what motivates me every day as a leader and a manager. And I think I want to know the people I work with really well, and I want them to be able to express themselves and give them opportunities to stretch themselves and be successful. And I think it's about helping people be creative and be relaxed and confident.
And you did mention about personal values. And as a leader, what values do you prioritize the most?
Empathy is a big one. And I'd say also leading by example, right? I think it's important for leaders to be willing to get their hands dirty and do the grunt work that everybody else has to do.
And what leadership lessons have you learned that have shaped you into the leader you are today?
Unfortunately, I've been exposed to a lot of misogyny in my career, often from other women, right? There's a lot of internalized misogyny and a lot of competitiveness with other women. And that is deeply shocking and saddening. So I make a real concerted effort to really champion other women in the workplace and be collaborative and make sure that we're lifting each other up and we're not competing with each other for the one spot at the table.
Yeah, I spoke to another tech queen the other day about men are not inclusive, but there is also a lot of women that are not inclusive either, which means that the strengths that the men have to sponsor each other is more challenging for women because we don't have the same behavior and patterns.
Right.
What are your 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses?
I'm methodical. I'm a completionist. I hate having something unfinished. And I have a real attention to detail. And those are both strengths and weaknesses, depending on the moment in time. So I think there's a constant struggle to make sure I'm using those strengths without letting them become a problem.
Let us now jump into the hottest topic in business today, workplace culture, unlocking the power of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So Stephanie, what do diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging mean to you personally?
Since I work in product, it's about having a variety of voices and perspectives at the table, and that leads to better product for more people.
What do you consider being 3 to 5 signs of good company culture if you were to join a new company tomorrow?
For me, it's a lot about that personal connection, right? Developing relationships with the people that you work with and the people that you serve, having really excellent collaboration, creativity, welcoming creativity from all parts of the organization. I really prefer very direct, blunt communication. So that's something else that I enjoy in an organization. And being successful, having an organization that actually launches things, especially in startups, sometimes don't actually happen. And that impacts the culture.
We did mention a little bit earlier about the challenges you've had with some of the women in the industry or during your life. So as a woman, what has been the most significant political or cultural barrier in your career, and how have you overcome these challenges?
The biggest for me that comes to mind is maternity leave. I have a 20-month-old now, but maternity leave was a real, kick in the teeth. Where I was the first person at my organization to take maternity leave. So nobody knew what to do. Like, even if they wanted to, there was people trying to support me and figure out how to navigate the system. And in the US, every state is different. There's no national laws. It's a mess. And that was shocking. Like, I just was thoroughly unprepared for how to handle maternity leave, and then how it really puts just this like halt pause on your career for this amount of time, and then trying to get that momentum, and then it stops, and then trying to pick it up again. And there's so many facets to it, and I don't know how to solve it, but I think that's something I've been now, after becoming a mother, I'm now really interested in. This is just something that so many people go through. So there has to be a better way.
Based on the challenge that you said regarding maternity leave, have it helped you to open up? Is there that you are able to discuss these kind of challenges with your colleagues, peers, and community?
Yeah, I try to talk about it a lot more with peers in the industry and men too, like, because they obviously don't have that experience. And even if they want to have paternity leave, they might not have it or whatever. So I have been trying to just weave it into conversation a lot more, and talk to people and talk to women, especially in other industries, about how their industry handles it and things like that. I think sometimes it's just we, particularly, I guess, as women, and sometimes we just suffer silence. We don't share our experience with each other. We just want to look like we're all buttoned up and everything's fine. And it's important to share your struggles so that we can all learn from each other and see what we can do to advocate for change.
There's also other challenges. For example, that there are many public and internal discussion about the barriers women of color, non-binary, and transgender individuals face from reaching high position or receiving funding in the tech industry. How have these issues affected you, and what is your advice on overcoming these roadblocks?
A lack of advocacy in the system for women of color, non-binary people, trans. There's just not an infrastructure. And even when allies want to do more, and when we want to do more, it's still building, right? Like, we're still developing that infrastructure for having champions and things like that. So it's going to take time. And it's about, if you are in a position of influence in your organization, making sure that you're making that a part of your day to day, is that you're advocating for others. Ask to be part of the hiring committee, be part of salary discussions. If you're not already at the table, but it would make sense for you to be at the table for some of these hiring discussions, reviews, whatever, put yourself forward, say that you want to be included. And I think that way you can help advocate. You can make that a part of your journey, is to help others.
And today, tech company invest heavily in marketing, attracting women of color, non-binary, and transgender individuals, but they're struggling to retain them. Articles show that women are leaving the tech industry. What is your best advice on strategies for how companies can work to build a stronger corporate culture that engages DIB?
Like I said, maternity leave was a big moment of struggle. And I'd say generally supporting working families, thinking about how you as an organization can really support working families, working people, so that they, I guess, don't have to choose between like spending time with their kids and performing well at their job.
And this is a great advice and a great question to ask these companies. However, we are still not there. So what would you say are the key challenges of implementing a DIB culture, maternity leave, all these parent issues in the tech industry today?
Something that my organization right now is fully remote, which is wonderful in many ways, and that it does give working parents a lot of flexibility to be able to trapped in traffic for hours trying to get their kid from daycare or whatever. So things like that. So there is a lot of flexibility built in being fully remote. That is wonderful. I think sometimes what happens downside is that because you're fully remote, you're also always on. So trying to make sure that there's also a defined space for that work-life balance. And everybody talks about work-life balance, and there's always a struggle. But I think that nobody's quite figured it out yet, right? Otherwise, we'd all do it. But we were fully remote before the pandemic. But I think some people are now realizing they can be fully remote and still be very successful post-pandemic. And I think that's to be embraced, with the caveat of then saying, like, how can you still make sure we don't go through that path of then being always on and avoiding that burnout?
Why do you think it's important for more women of color, non-binary, and transgender to join the tech industry today?
Beyond all of the sort of social reasons why, if you want to look at it strictly from a product point of view, you make better products when you have more diverse voices at the table. You will just make better products that are better for more people.
And how do you think companies will benefit from not just having them as leaders, but actually higher gender representation at C-suite level and boardrooms with a voice?
Having diverse voices at a leadership level makes sure that we're thinking about like product direction, right? We're thinking about these really high level moves of an organization, have that voice in mind is just super important.
And you've given a lot of great advice, but what do you think is the main reason that we still see few women of color, non-binary, and transgender leaders in the tech leadership roles and as startup founders still today?
There's still a lot of unconscious bias. Everybody knows that. Maybe some conscious bias too, but certainly a lot of unconscious bias. And like we said, a lack of an advocacy pipeline.
There's also a challenge and a concern. The data reveals a trend of low funding rates of startups led by women, with only 1 to 2% of the funding directed towards women in the tech industry. Black and Latina women in particular receive less than 1%. What factors do you believe contributes to this imbalance, and what strategies can be activated to increase funding for women-led startups?
I've never been part of a startup funding cycle, so it's hard for me to speak with real knowledge here, but everything we've talked about, there's a lack of infrastructure and then perhaps a perception amongst the powers that hold these funds that whatever this product that women, people of color are putting forward, they may be not perceiving that product as a value or that it would be. There's this perception that it won't be successful because maybe it doesn't fit the mold of what has been successful before. Just trying to get over that hump of we're doing new things because we don't want to do the same thing that we've always done before that didn't serve people.
And how much do you think the tech industry has changed regarding DIB since you joined?
It's nice to see organizations making an overt effort to hire more women and people of color and things like that. I think there is an effort there. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I'd say there's a concerted effort for sure.
And looking back on your career, what one thing would you have changed in your working environment to break the bias?
I don't know if there was something that I could have changed in my working environment.
And looking forward, what actions will you take as a leader to reduce bias and improve DIB for the next generation in tech?
Use any position of influence that I have to make sure somebody's not being dismissed because of something that's irrelevant to their performance. I had an incident years ago where a woman told me that she didn't like my presentation because she didn't like my voice, because I had this like feminine voice. Things like that. No control over my voice. Just making sure that people aren't being shut down because of things that they have no control over and aren't related to their performance.
So let's move on to another hot topic in business today, which you touched base a little bit earlier, work-life balance and mental health. You undoubtedly have a busy lifestyle. How do you take care of yourself to maintain good mental health?
That's a tough one. I go to therapy pretty regularly. Big advocate for therapy and hobbies, trying to give yourself some grace and space. Even when it feels like you don't have time to do, you have to force yourself to have a little bit of time.
Have you ever experienced burnout?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For me, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I think a lot of people, especially in the US, struggle with this. I'd say with you assign your personal value as a human to your job. And I think it's important to really do the mental work, meditation, therapy, whatever you need to do to divorce yourself from that, to remind yourself that your job is important and you put your effort into it, but it doesn't define you, who you are as a human and your values.
And what is your advice on how companies can create a more mentally healthy workplace in the new now?
Protecting some non-working hours, fostering personal connection between people, and celebrating progress. That's something that I think sometimes we struggle with, which is celebrating wins, celebrating big effort, celebrating progress, instead of just continuing to grind with what's the next thing.
What motivates you every day to get out of bed?
For me, it's our end users, for sure.
Now, let us wrap up with a few words of wisdom and a piece of advice for our listeners. Stephanie, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given that has helped you during setbacks in your role and career?
Can't think of any specific advice I received. It's funny, but I'd say maybe it's what we just talked about, not attaching yourself to your job, attaching your value, recognizing that if you lose a job, like it doesn't mean that you are lacking as a person. It's just a step in your journey.
And then what is the worst advice you ever received and how did you handle that?
I just mentioned when somebody told me that I needed to change my voice, I think just ignore it.
Is there something you wish you would have known or a skill you wish you had when starting out in the tech industry?
Wish I'd known more about visual design and creating like good mock-ups and prototypes. My day-to-day would be a lot easier if I could just make really good digital prototypes myself. So having some skill in that way where you can mock things up easily, fast.
Thank God to AI tools that can do that for you.
Yes.
If you had the ability to go back in time to when you were just the beginning of your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Maybe just, you don't have to know where you're going to end up. Just keep moving forward. It'll all fall into place. It'll be okay.
What advice would you give to young girls, women of color, non-binaries, and transgenders who are trying to break into STEM fields today, especially wanting to become next generation leaders and founders?
You don't have to box yourself into a particular skill set or role. There are so many positions in tech, in STEM. There's so many ways to enter the field. You don't have to feel like you need to get this degree or you need to do this huge barrier. You can find other ways to enter.
So last but not least, Stephanie, what is next for you in your role in career and tech? What are your career aspirations?
I still think I have a lot of growth in product management and I want to continue working on that. So for me, it's continuing to be surrounded by leaders in product management and expand, get better at my own role. And it's funny, I feel like I've had my head down for so long. I haven't even thought about my career aspirations in so long. I'm just grinding it out. So I feel like right now it's about this product and about more of it. It's totally my baby before I had a baby, and I'm not done with it yet.
I look forward to follow your journey. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for being a guest on the Queens of Tech podcast, sharing your journey without a doubt, inspire change, and reshape company culture for the next generation of women of color, non-binary, and transgender leaders and founders in tech. Thank you for listening. If you have worked in the tech industry a minimum 3 years and would like to share your journey, please nominate yourself or somebody you know to i@jasminemoradi.com. For more podcast episodes and to learn more about the Queens of Tech initiative and to support us, visit queensof.tech.